The Red Raiders had a busy Christmas weekend as they had a player declare for the NFL draft. They also landed a 2025 commitment. Plus, they offered a DT in the portal. Who is it? We'll discuss that and much more in today's video. First and foremost, before we get into introductions or anything, I hope each and every one of you watching this video had a very Merry Christmas or holiday season. I know we did over here at the Maxfield, Lawson, and everything in between household, and we appreciate you guys tuning into these videos each and every day. The best way to support the channel is by simply hitting that like button, subscribing, and if you want to become a Back to 12 podcast squad member, well, I'll leave those details down in the comments below, but I wanted to make sure and get out there. I hope everyone had a very, very Merry Christmas. Let's jump right into this because there was a lot of news for Texas Tech this past weekend, and it starts with Baylor Cupp. Baylor Cupp officially declares he will go into the NFL draft. That makes now 5 Texas Tech Red Raiders who are now in the NFL draft process. You remember Myles Cole? He entered the draft. He did not play in the bowl game. He is already training in Miami, according to Joey McGuire. You've got Malik Dunlap, you've got Rabbit, you've got Austin McNamara, and now you have Baylor Cupp, and I would assume there's a couple more coming in terms of the Tony Bradford and Hutchings of the world. Now, remember, when it comes to Baylor Cupp, he was a generational type prospect when it came to out of high school. He was the highest ranked tight end ever, right? Started at A&M, had some injuries there, transferred to Texas Tech, played 2 years out in the 806, and it was kind of the same deal. When he was on the field, he was productive to some degree, but also was just battling injuries, it felt like, each and every week of his college career. And according to Joey McGuire, there was a lot of speculation going into Baylor Cupp this offseason that, hey, he would be back in that tight end room for Texas Tech. Or why is Texas Tech going after so many tight ends in the portal? Well, there's a pretty good reason why. According to Joey McGuire in an article from Don Williams of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, Joey McGuire said Baylor doesn't have another year, and that Joey McGuire could not elaborate more. So there's that front. Now, I know that this is interesting from the standpoint of what does it do for Texas Tech in the tight end depth in 2024? Well, they're not in a bad spot. You got Mason Tharp. He's your lone returnee in the room. Then you've got Jalen Conyers, the West Texas native. He transfers in from Arizona State. You've got a guy in John Carlos Miller II who led the FCS in terms of yards per catch. And then you've got a guy from the high school ranks that you can build up and develop in a guy like Trey Jackson that's versatile, that actually played inside and outside during his high school career. So overall, really solid tight end group right there, and wishing Baylor Cupp the best of luck in his NFL endeavors. All right, let's jump into the latest Texas Tech commitment in the class of 2025. Recruiting never stops. It just simply doesn't, and Texas Tech proved that over the holiday weekend, as on Christmas Eve, you had a West Texas native in Amarillo's TJ Tillman, a class of 2025 athlete, commit to the Scarlet and Black. Now, Tillman stands at 6 foot, 165 pounds, and in 10 games this past season, he caught 16 passes for just under 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, as well as having 3 interceptions. He is a guy that, well, we've learned over the past, 3 years now in terms of high school recruiting, what this staff likes. TJ Tillman fits the bill perfectly. A long, rangy, athletic guy that can play on either side of the ball, runs track as well, multi-sport athlete, fast, right? I don't know where he plays for Texas Tech, whether that's on the offensive side or defensive side. I probably lean defensive, but it could be one of those situations that you heard Joey McGuire talk about during his recap of the 2024 class, where there's battles between coaches in terms of maybe Juice wants him, and then you got Yates, right, in terms of the DB coach fighting it out in terms of who wins his services in terms of playing on the Texas Tech roster, whether that's on the defensive side of the football or whether that's on the offensive side of the football. Either way, it's a really solid ad. Now, he's not ranked, but it feels like after watching some of his tape, and there's limited amount, this is one of those situations where Texas Tech got on him early, and some of his offers include already Texas, TCU, Stephen F. Austin, Texas State. Now, I understand some of those schools aren't eye-popping, but there's a couple in there that are pretty eye-popping in Texas and TCU. And when you look at the overall class for Texas Tech as it currently stands right now, and you have it at the bottom of your screen right there, that's as of the day after Christmas, December 26, 2023. You got Lloyd Jones III. He is the prize right now at the quarterback spot. Out of Hitchcock, he is a 4-star quarterback. Then you've got Gentry, Robertson, Stone, Anderson, Tillman, and Adams. All of them are 3 stars except for Tillman. And right now, he's not ranked by any recruiting service, but I expect that to change pretty quickly. As we've seen in the past, Texas Tech gets on these recruits early when they're not ranked, and then they just skyrocket up the charts. And the perfect example is Will Hammond. Now, when we're talking about a recruiting class here that is literally a year out. Okay, I get that. You get that. But let's look at the early rankings of how this early class with 7 guys in it, as it stands right now with the addition of Tillman, looks for Texas Tech football. And of course, I'm talking about the 2025 recruiting class. It's right there at the bottom of your screen. Texas Tech, according to 24/7, has the 26th ranked recruiting class in the country, 4th in the Big 12. Rivals is the highest right now at 17th in the country, 1st in the Big 12. And then on 3 has the Red Raiders at 27th overall, 4th in the Big 12. So a couple of fourths, and then Rivals is a little higher on some guys than the other 2 recruiting services, as they have the Red Raiders at 17th in the country, 1st overall in the Big 12 as it currently stands right now. And we all know this is going to change drastically, ebbs and flows when it comes to recruiting. All right, let's talk about the latest transfer portal target for the Red Raiders, and that is going to be Deion Tank Wilson Jr., a New Mexico State transfer defensive tackle, 6'5", 300 pounds, 1 year of eligibility, actually started his college career with the Wildcats. I know that that's a broad thing to say because the Wildcats is one of the most popular mascots in college football, but it's the Big 12 one. That doesn't help anymore either because Kansas State and Arizona, but it's Arizona. He started out in the desert, and then he played there for 3 seasons before transferring to be an Aggie out in New Mexico State. Played 1 season at New Mexico State in 2023. He had 30 tackles, 1.5 sacks. He holds offers as it currently stands right now in the portal from Texas A&M, Indiana, Cal, Rutgers, North Texas, and others. If you remember what Joey McGuire said after he recapped that 2024 class, not only from the high school ranks, but the portal class as well with local media out in the 806, he said if they were to add anything else from this portal class, obviously, a player here, a player there can change things if it's the right guy. But overall, the position they're looking at most is the defensive line, specifically the interior of it. And that makes sense. When you lose a guy like Danny Seeley, he flipped from Texas Tech to BYU. He was going to be that big guy in the middle of that defensive line for Texas Tech. Now you shift your focus, and maybe a guy like Deion Tank Wilson Jr. from New Mexico State is that guy. You've got some steep competition there, including some SEC Big 10 schools and an ACC school as well. So you look at that, and maybe you can land a guy like him in the portal to solidify your defensive line. He's obviously got the measurables, and he's got some production as well at New Mexico State. Maybe you can land him and really solidify that defensive line if you are the Red Raiders. That's going to do it for today's video, though. As I mentioned, Baylor Cupp declares for the NFL Draft. You've got another commitment in the class of 2025, and this one in TJ Tillman, a West Texas kid up there in Amarillo. And then the latest portal target for the Red Raiders is Deion Tank Wilson Jr. If you haven't already, the best way to support the channel here is by simply liking the video, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to join the Back to 12 squad and be a member here on the channel, I'll leave that down in the comments and in the description below. I am RC Maxfield, reminding you, if you want to be a part of the most engaging Texas Tech community here on Twitter and, well, on YouTube as well, because I'm on Twitter way too much. Ask my wife about that. We'll say that for another video. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.